Hello and welcome back to the channel. Game week 1 has officially finished, and of course we've already had our first massive variance swing in terms of captaincy as a majority of the game. In fact, 60% of FPL players captained Alexander Isak, who was at home to Southampton, but unfortunately the game state went against them. Newcastle ended up getting a red card from Fabian Schär in the 30th minute, meaning that they played 60 minutes against 11 players down a man, and somehow Isak still went out there, picked up an assist, finishing on 5 points, but never in doubt was the Egyptian king picking up his return for the 8th time in consecutive seasons, getting a return on opening day. He ended up getting a goal, of course, and he ended up adding an assist to that as well as picking up the top bonus. So Salah ended up with 14 points with the players that went without Haaland captaining him, and then the players that went with Haaland captain Isak, and he only got 5. So there was a massive 9-point swing just based on captaincy alone, and that is how you know FPL is back with a bang. So without further ado, let's jump right into my Game Week 1 team review. Game Week 1 was very kind to me, and I ended up with 76 points and finishing with an overall rank of 600k, and I'm really excited with where that leaves me at the end of Game Week 1. However, I can't get too optimistic because I don't have Haaland in my team, and he will be the main captaincy contender in Game Week 2 playing at Ipswich at home, so I will probably get destroyed. So I'm just going to stay humble and just be happy in my bubble. But regardless of that in Game Week 2 and the impending death that I'm going to go through then, I think I just wanted to break down my team. The first thing I wanted to explain is going to be my defense. I've gone for double Arsenal defense, even though they have very difficult fixtures. Now, I know that sounds a little bit outlandish and a little bit scary, but of course, Arsenal have the best defense in terms of expected goals conceded last year, being 30% better than every other defense in the league. And then I can mention that Gabriel and Saliba have also picked up 20 and 21 returns last year, respectively. Now, it's going to be very difficult for other players in FPL to replicate what Saliba and Gabriel will do. And if they are, without using those players, they'll probably have to spend a lot of transfers in those positions. And I just found that last year, it was hard to beat them. I didn't own a single Arsenal defender the entire season. So I'm going to make them from my villains last year, and I'm turning them into my heroes because I know how difficult it is to replicate points, especially from defenders in FPL. I've avoided David Raya because I don't think he'll make very many saves, and I don't think he'll be a bonus points magnet. But of course, in Game Week 1, he goes out there and proves me wrong, picks up an 8-pointer, 6 points for the clean sheet, 1 save point, 1 bonus point. But I think over the course of the season, I think Saliba and Gabriel will get more bonus points than him, and Saliba and Gabriel will probably also pick up 2 or 3 goals from set pieces as well. I'm not going for Ben White because I think Gabriel has enough attacking upside at the 6.0 price point where I think he'll sort of be in line with Ben White, and that's exactly what the bookmakers are saying, where their projected goal involvement for both White and Gabriel is aligned. In fact, Gabriel, if he has very similar goal involvement, should get a slight edge because his goal involvement will be weighted more towards XG from his headers rather than White, who has his crossing. So that's why I've gone for Gabriel, not only for similar attacking threat, but because he's 0.5 cheaper, and I'll be able to have some more defensive depth. If you look at my squad structure overall, I've gone for an only solid draft, meaning that I have a lot of depth. Like if you look at my bench, I've got a 5.5 attacker as well as 2 4.5 defenders that I can rotate within my team. I understand that Arsenal don't have good fixtures, specifically in Game Week 4 and Game Week 5 where they play against Spurs and Man City, as well as in Game Week 9 where they play against Liverpool. And that's where somebody like Lewis Dunk comes in because he plays Ipswich at home in Game Week 4, then he plays Nottingham Forest at home in Game Week 5, and then he plays Wolves at home in Game Week 9. So he kind of protects Saliba whenever he has his more difficult fixtures, and that's why I've put Dunk as my 4th defender. And then I've put Leif Davis in there just specifically because I want him for Game Week 5, playing away to Southampton. In the championship, when they played Southampton twice, he got a clean sheet in one fixture, and then he got a goal and an assist the second time they played. So that's why I wanted to put Leif Davis in my team, just to play him in Game Week 5 when Gabriel's playing against Man City. So I'm just sort of protecting Arsenal for their most difficult fixture and just allowing them to pick up the points and be my heroes, allowing my game weeks and my ranks to be determined about how many points I can get from my Arsenal defenders, and I'm very content with that. Of course, I went for Trent in my defense. He is the best defender in the entire game. It would not surprise me one bit to see Trent, the number 1 points defender in FPL, by the time we get to the end of the season, if he stays fit. Now, the interesting thing that I noticed in preseason is that Liverpool are playing with a double pivot in midfield, meaning that we'll likely keep more clean sheets than we did under Jurgen Klopp. And that's why I knew for sure I had to start with Trent. In fact, in my most recent draft that I posted on YouTube, I also had Alisson in there. But unfortunately, I just couldn't keep the money in my defense. I really wanted to add the extra depth by bringing in a fifth defender in Leif Davis. So that's why I had to downgrade my goalkeeper spot into somebody like Dean Henderson. The reason why I went for Henderson is because he is playing for Palace, who were the fourth best defense in terms of expected goals conceded once the new manager came in. And that was without Mark Gahey in the squad. So even if Gahey leaves to Newcastle, it's not a big issue. I know Henderson won't make too many saves, but I'm just hoping that he'll pick up some clean sheets along the way. And when I'm looking at the defenders in my team, I don't really plan on spending many transfers on them, except maybe the Trent position. So that's why I feel like I'm really solid defensively. And I know I've spent a lot of money there, but I'm just not sure how many points most people will be getting from their 4.5s because it's hard to really pick who the good 4.5s are. Even the players that have good defensive data, they just aren't really trustworthy and they can easily concede goals at the end of games. So I just didn't really feel any trust with most of the 4.5s. Of course, you have the Robinsons and the Kwanzas, but we just saw Kwanzaa destroyed because he got subbed off at halftime. So it's like there's so much risk with the 4.5 defenders. I'm just glad I avoided that entire bucket overall, and I can just focus on my attack with my transfers. So moving on to my midfield, I've gone for Saka, Bruno, Salah, Eze, and Isak. Those five are usually 90-minute men on the penalties for their clubs, and I'm not really expecting to spend a transfer on them. Now, when I'm looking at my differential players, I've gone for Dwight McNeil from Everton, and you're probably like, what the hell is an Everton defender doing in your midfield? Well, honestly, even I feel the same way. It doesn't really fill me with much optimism, but Everton are first in the fixture ticker over the first 10 weeks, and I'm really trying to save my wildcard. Everton aren't the type of team that get many goals, but they have a very strong emphasis on set pieces. So I would expect Dwight McNeil to be on all the corners as well as the direct or indirect free kicks. So that's why I've gone for McNeil as my differential, and I'm hoping that he's able to pick up some sort of returns along the way through their easier fixtures. I've gone for Muniz as my 6.0 striker because he has Man United, Ipswich, and Leicester in the first three. And then I think he also has Nottingham Forest in game week 6. So I'm kind of looking at that where he's kind of my set and forget striker for the first couple of weeks. I can evaluate the league and see if there are any other options that come at the 6.0 price point. Some players I'm already evaluating into my watch list would be Joao Pedro as well as Johan Wissa for sure are two options that I'm really considering to sell Muniz to once we get past the game week 6 fixture swing. So that's kind of the spot that I'm looking at to spend my transfers, and I'm looking to rotate Dwight McNeil with Adam Armstrong. Now, McNeil is kind of the differential that I've gone with. I could have gone for Semenyo, and I'm really disappointed I didn't go there because he actually got the attacking return in game week 1 as well. Such a heartbreaker because I could have been there. It's like one of the worst signs is when you're like, man, I had him in one of my drafts, you know? But it's okay. I've tinkered so much that I could have said that with so many different players that got points in game week 1. So it's one of those where you just got to be happy with the points that you got, right? So I'm looking at my team with Dwight McNeil and Armstrong, and I've gone with these two because they rotate very well. I think Adam Armstrong is playing for Southampton, and they are the best team of the newly promoted teams, a 5.5 penalty taker, and I just like him. I just think he will represent value, a 90-minute man. We've already seen somebody like Brent Burton Diaz subbed off after the 70th minute mark, but Armstrong plays the full 90 because he's the reason that they ended up coming up into the Premier League because he is their guy, right? They're trusting and backing the striker that they went with last year. So really happy that they're prioritizing him. He's getting the good minutes, and I'm not really sure I will spend a transfer on that spot ever. So I'm kind of just looking to spend my transfers on my McNeil position as well as my Muniz position in order to protect Adam Armstrong. And that's the way that I've built my structure. I really like the players that I've gone for. I think Saka, Bruno, Salah, Eze, and Isak are just hygiene picks. And eventually when I get to game week 7, I can consider if Haaland's conversion rate is high, then I can, of course, sell Salah and Isak and get to Haaland. But if his conversion rate is low, then I can just avoid him and get to players like Son, Palmer, Foden, and just figure out some stuff in my midfield. So I'm kind of liking the way that my team is looking. I know 76 points looks great, but my team was very well set up for game week 1, and I'm very apprehensive for how my team will do over the next couple of weeks, especially given how difficult Arsenal's fixtures are, and I've gone for Arsenal defense as my differential. So I'm really going to be praying for my players like McNeil and Muniz and Armstrong to give me my differential attacking returns, to give me the green arrows. So let's see how things go, but overall in game week 1, I'm off to a great start. Moving on to game week 2, my plan is to just roll my transfer. In fact, my plan over the next 5 or 6 weeks is to genuinely just roll my transfer and captain Salah every week. This week, he's going to be playing against Brentford at home, and in the last 3 games against them, he has 4 goals and 1 assist, so I'm just going to be keeping the faith in Mo Salah and captaining him at home, even though Haaland probably has a slightly better fixture, and he's at home. but it's okay. I don't think it's worth a -4 to bring him in, and I don't think it's worth another -4 to bring Salah back. So it's not worth a -8, and I'm just going to be riding with Mo and just expecting to get a red arrow relative to managers that are going to be captaining Haaland. Now, moving on to the next section of my video, this is going to be a Q&A session where I asked a question on Twitter and I was like, hey, if there are any questions you want me to answer, just let me know. And I got a couple of replies, so I'm like, let me just address some of these. The first question is coming from Brentford Hive, and he asks, if you don't own Salah, when would you look to get him in? And I think that's an easy answer. If you don't own Salah, you probably have Haaland. So I would say that you're going to be looking to captain Haaland in game week 2, 3, and 4. But when it comes to game week 5 and Haaland's playing against Arsenal, you're going to be looking to captain alternatives. And I'm not sure how much faith I would put into Son and Watkins in terms of captaincy. So I'd be looking to sell Haaland in game week 5 to afford the Egyptian King back into your team when Liverpool are playing at home to Bournemouth. The next question is going to be from FPL Aaron, and he asks, who do you think this year's game breaker will be? I think it's very obvious. It's Eberechi Eze at 7.0. If he's fit, playing for Palace, he should be in every single player's team. Eberechi Eze is just underpriced. Even if he was priced at 8.5, I would still have him in my team. That's how much faith I have in that guy. The next question is coming from FPL Warrior, and he asks, who is the best 4.5 replacement for Kwanzaa? Now, I did actually post a thread about this on Twitter, and if you are there, go check it out. I also mentioned this in my previous Game Week 1 team selection. I think the best replacement for Kwanzaa is Leif Davis from Ipswich. Why Leif Davis? Well, he's going to be playing for a championship team, so he's probably not going to get many clean sheets, right? Well, I don't think clean sheets really matter in the Premier League. You know, the other 4.5 options are like Anderson or Konza or Pinnock or Dunk, and they're probably only going to get maybe 6 or 7 clean sheets with maybe 2 attacking returns. So I think, can you get more than 8 or 9 returns from another 4.5? And I'm like, hell yes, bro. Give me Leif Davis. He got 20 attacking returns in the championship. But bro, it's the championship. This is the Premier League. It's going to be a big drop off. Well, look at Alfie Doughty. His attacking data in terms of underlying XGI only decreased by 10%. So even if we gave a conservative assumption of decreasing Leif Davis's underlying attacking data by 25%, he'd still be at 0.25 expected goal involvement per 90, and that would put him in the top 10 amongst all defenders in the league. So at 4.5, I want that guy in my team. The next question is coming from AFC Will, and he's asking, can you address the Haaland triple captaincy situation? So for me, I think triple captaincy this week, it's a personal decision, but I'm leaning towards that's dumb. Like, I don't think that's even a smart decision. I'd rather be using my triple captain whenever Haaland, Salah, Saka, Palmer, or Son have a double game week where you have 2 shots at the dartboard rather than just going for 1, even though it does feel like a very easy single goal, maybe even a brace. I doubt he'll get a hat trick because Ipswich were very solid against Liverpool in the first half. So I kind of just look at this fixture in particular, and I just feel like people are underrating Ipswich. Like, I think Leicester are much worse than Ipswich. Maybe I'm a little bit biased towards my love for Leif Davis, but Leicester looked terrible against Spurs. Just Spurs didn't score enough goals. They didn't create enough XG from their possession. So in general, I'd feel like go ahead if you want a triple captain and you feel like it's fine, go ahead. But I wouldn't, and I would shy away from this. However, the counter argument to this is there's a mystery chip. And maybe that could be some sort of additional triple captain, or maybe you'll get like this special double captain. And then it would have been like, hey, I can use my 1 mystery chip in the double game week, and I can use my bench boost in the other double game week. So I could use my triple captain whenever I want. And that's the thing. We don't have access to that mystery chip information. And that could make this play really interesting because 40% of the game doesn't even own Haaland. So I think you can consider it, but I don't think it's the smartest play to be using a triple captaincy chip this week, and I think there will be better weeks on paper to be using it. The next question is coming from Adam, and he's asking for my thoughts on Zinchenko. He's also an Arsenal fan, so he's kind of just like pitching me up a really soft fastball and I could smash it out the park because I honestly don't rate Zinchenko at all. He is so frustrating. The men cannot defend, but he is the perfect defender for Arsenal. He's the type of defender that you can play in easier fixtures because if there's a low block, he can come in and sort of step into midfield to help break that team down. And I think he's really special in doing that, but he is terrible defensively. Like, what he brings from an offensive perspective does not make up for his lack of defense. If I'm an opposing coach coming against Arsenal, I see Zinchenko in the 11, I am telling my best winger, bro, you are going to get the ball every single time that our team has the ball. You're going to run at Zinchenko and you're going to try to beat him, and that's how we're going to score against Arsenal. Because apart from that, I find it really hard for players and teams to just score against Arsenal in general. So I feel like Arsenal's best team won't involve Zinchenko, and I think Arteta knows that already. That's why he recruited somebody like Calafiori to probably be playing in that left back spot. The next question is going to be coming from Skyline, and he's asking, What are your differentials of the week? Okay, so for me, it's very obvious in the defender spot. I'd be going for Rico Lewis because I think he has been very solid in preseason, starting every single game. And whenever he plays, he's the one that pushes forward more than Vardiol. So I'm kind of hoping that Rico Lewis plays, especially because I don't own Vardiol as well. But it wouldn't surprise me if Walker came into this team, but it's against Ipswich. So I think Pep can afford to just give Walker one more week of rest. I think he has, 6 returns in 8 starts last year. Like, that kid is special. He's definitely on my watch list if Walker ever picks up an injury. So that would be my differential defender. Going on to my differential mid, it's similar on that Man City theme. I'd probably be bringing in either a Phil Foden if he plays on the right wing, but if that's kind of too expensive for you and you think Foden's not a differential, bro, well, then I'd be going for somebody like Jeremy Doku, who I think has incredible upside. Maybe even a Bernardo Silva because he was picking up those central positions last game week, but it's up to you. I would say like some sort of Man City midfielder would be my differential. I prefer Doku personally, and then up top I'd be going for Rodrigo Muniz. I think he's one of the best strikers in the league. He's definitely top 10, and I think his fixture is incredible. Playing against the worst team in the league by far, Leicester, they were the worst team that I watched this week, so I would be looking to target them as much as I can. So Muniz would be my differential up top. Moving on to the next question from Benji FPL, and he's asking, what would you suggest Palmer owners do if they have backed him over Saka or Son? Would you hold or move? That's a really good question. I think for me, it's very obvious because Palmer looked really rusty. He didn't really look that great. He also didn't get many minutes in preseason, but you can say that he also had his worst fixture as well. So there's only good things that can come. And I actually recommended to one of my friends to get rid of Saka and put Palmer in their team in FPL, and I know he's not really feeling pretty great about that because Saka got a double-digit haul and Palmer blanked. But when I'm looking at the next couple of weeks, Palmer has much better fixtures, and Palmer is much more explosive than Saka in the last year. So I just feel like Palmer has this ability to actually outscore Saka from game week 2 to game week 5, and I think that's where you could reassess. If Palmer's not looking great, then I would look to downgrade him to Saka in game week 6, but you can even still hold on to him. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if you just held on to Palmer over the course of the entire season. That's how good Palmer is. He's just a little bit rusty, so I'd say just hold for a couple weeks, just stay patient, and see how it goes. If you aren't liking it, game week 6 will be your exit point to Saka. The last question is coming from Ivor FPL, and he's asking, he actually asked me a couple of questions. So he's asking me why I don't like Luis Diaz. Well, that's firstly because Luis Diaz just missed too many chances. I'm so tired of watching this guy miss. And then the next question is like, how long do I hold Isak and Gordon if they do not perform? Well, I would suggest that you would hold on to them for the Bournemouth fixture in game week 2, as well as the Spurs fixture in game week 3. I think Newcastle have scored 10 goals against Spurs in their last 2 games at home against them. So I'm expecting them to put up a lot of goals in that fixture. And we saw Leicester score against Spurs. So of course Newcastle will score against them. So you should at least hold for game week 2 and game week 3 and then reassess. You also added a question at the end and you were like, what should I do with Son? Based on his performance, should I give him one more chance? I would say absolutely. I know he looked very poor against Leicester. In fact, I think that was the fixture where Maddison was trying to stamp his authority because he's playing against his old team. And then you had Solanke also trying to stamp his authority because he's making his debut. So there was like a little bit of an awkward situation happening there where both Solanke and Maddison were trying to be the alpha in that game. They had so many chances. They didn't create enough XG given the amount of possession that they had. And I'm sure Postecoglou will drill that into them in the training sessions between matches. And I think when I'm looking at the fixture for Son at home to Everton, there's no way you can spend a transfer on him. He's one of the best differentials in the game. In fact, I think your exit point would be to somebody like Saka in game week 3, who's going to be at home to Brighton. If not, you could probably go down to somebody like Foden. If you're 100% feeling like, man, I just want out of this Son mess. Like, I don't want to be going into Spurs because, Son didn't even have a shot on target in the first game. So I can understand that. And if you're looking to just sell him for sure, Foden would be my guy at home to Ipswich, and you could genuinely consider captaining him as a differential. But yeah, I'd suggest just holding. I think that fixture for Everton was so good because Everton looked terrible without Branthwaite against Brighton, and I expect them to still concede 2 or 3 goals to Spurs in game week 2. Alright guys, so those are my thoughts going into game week 2, and I hope that I was able to provide some value and some insight to you over the course of this video. If I have, just make sure you hit that unsubscribe button, hit the dislike button, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.